Our parents are not actually controlling us anymore. The reason we feel controlled by them is because they now live as perpetrators in our own mind, but we don't realize that co-creation, playing a victim constantly to the past, will only hinder you. It's not that you were not a victim. How long will you keep being victimized?
Today we dive into what it actually takes to stop the cycle of carrying the patterns that you didn't choose. And joining us to unpack this is psychologist, best-selling author, and one of the most important voices on conscious parenting, Dr. Shefali. For somebody listening, they have that feeling like they are waiting for that parent to say something for them to move on. What is the first thing that they can do?
You've been told that in order to move on, you need that person on the outside, be it an ex-lover, be it your parent, your best friend, to say something to you. That is a lie. Doesn't mean you wouldn't want it, but you don't need it. And once you realize that you don't need it, then the next question is,
I'm coming to you with kind of this, what is happening in that experience?
I can't do everything. You know, everybody wants me to do everything, and I'm trying my best. Doesn't everyone see I'm trying my best? So many parents don't realize how much they have recruited their children in their movie.
This is really like one of those moments, right, where you get a mirror to yourself.
Then you have to separate who is the real child and who is the inner child.
All right, Balancers, welcome to another episode of The Balance Theory. I am beyond excited to chat with today's guest. She has taught me so much over the years through online, through all the amazing content she shares for free. So I'm so honored to have her on the show to really teach us and really allow us into her world a little bit deeper. So it's my absolute pleasure, Dr. Shefali, to welcome you to the show this morning.
I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. You've been doing this work for so many years. One thing that is really interesting that I was thinking about before we got on this call. As someone who has been doing this work for so long, what's something that life has taught you recently that has really, really surprised you?
Well, you know, I'm always learning from people because my entire day is spent helping people, right? So I'm always looking into their relationships, their psychologies. So I'm always learning from them. But I think what constantly surprises me is how willingly we humans are able to just give power to others. You know, as I work with so many women and myself and my own journey, but just across the board, and men too, that men may just give it to status, or men may just give it to capitalism or to power, but women give it to other people, right? And this giving of power to others, whatever that other thing is on the outside, is something that constantly surprises me, constantly saddens me, because I think because we give our mind away, our power away so easily, that we suffer. And so I'm always, working with people to hold on to their power, to retrieve their power, to reclaim their power. And so this is my constant amazement at, how quickly we do that in our lives.
It's an interesting concept, right? Especially for women, the idea of giving yourself to others and how that can be such a dangerous thing. I can definitely resonate with that, and I can understand from conditioning how that comes up. But it's a difficult one to navigate, especially when you're sitting in the role of a mother, which I'm very new to this journey. I have a 10-month-old daughter, is primarily giving yourself to your family and your children. How do you sort of reconcile the line between giving yourself in a way that's dangerous and not? Because I think a lot of women struggle with this feeling of, what's left over for me, but being a mum is so much about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the ultimate balance, right? To go with the name of your podcast. How do you keep for yourself and give to the other, especially when it's your child? You have to give to your child. So where is that line, right? And it's so difficult. It's so difficult. What I tell mothers, because I work with mothers so much, is that there will be a period of time in your motherhood where you will lose yourself and you will lose your identity. And that is almost okay as your baby is young in the first few years. So don't be scared by that. Don't resent your baby for that, because remember, your baby doesn't have a sense of self. So they're going to borrow your sense of self as they are developing theirs. And that's why I think so many women today suffer, is because they're trying to have the career and have the perfect body and be on the charity board and do philanthropy and be out there and be a mother without a community. So they are really wearing themselves thin, because their identity cannot be in so many places. So I often tell mothers that for the first few years, it's okay if you are feeling overwhelmed and all over the place and feeling like you're a failure. That's almost, predictable. But what we need to do is allow for imperfection and allow ourselves to lose ourselves. But then, once your children are a little older, I think the way to know the balance is to develop your own, sense of connection to yourself and what gives you passion, what gives you joy, and then to cultivate that. So I think between the ages of 0 to 6, you're enveloped in motherhood, you're, chaotic, you're exhausted. But then as your children grow older, to then cultivate your own passion. Is there something during the week that is uniquely yours, whether it's your career, whether it's a little hobby, whatever it is, make it yours and allow it to give you life. And then you'll naturally create that seesaw. It won't be a perfect balance, but the seesaw between feeding yourself and feeding others.
I think that's really beautiful advice, and actually not just for the parents or wanting to be parents listening. I think having that passion in your life is so important. Actually, interestingly, and I fully appreciate this does not apply to every single person, but I actually genuinely don't feel like I've lost myself. And I do just want to say that, because I think it's an experience a lot of people go through. But I think because I have this passion, right, this podcast for me, I had it long before I had the baby. I feel like it's almost been that thread of that's just something for me. But I do think, and would welcome your thoughts on, I think that the trouble we go through is we expect ourselves to literally produce the output, the doing. We expect it to be literally exactly the same, completely ignoring the fact that we've had a life-changing event, especially for women who are high performers and they really like to achieve and have that success, especially if they've had that up until the point of having a baby. I think where we go wrong is we expect ourselves to be the same, and the identity piece comes in because we're really not the same, even if you still have your passion like me, right? Your life is so different. It's navigating that new norm. How did you feel when you went through this phase? What was this identity like for you?
Yeah, so I really appreciate what you said, that if you have a little piece of your own passion, that'll keep you sane. So hold on to that. I agree with you. And yet, don't be hard on yourself if you don't have that passion. And you're right that we underestimate that we are raising this whole new being, and it takes a lot of energy from the woman, especially if she has biologically birthed her children, right? It takes so much energy, and women want to bypass that tremendous, achievement. And when they bypass that achievement, they actually, limit their ability to have compassion for themselves, because they think, oh, I just popped this baby out and I should go back to normal. But they don't realize that their bodies have gone through such a cataclysmic hormonal turbulence that they deserve to be compassionate with themselves and slow themselves down. For me, I was in a PhD program when I had my daughter, and all my classmates were younger than me and no children, and they would go out to the bars and have fun, and the next day I would come to class and listen to all of them. And I was still young. I was only 31, but they were even younger than me. And so it felt very disorienting for me, and I was very conflicted. I wanted to be the old self without any responsibilities, but yet I had a baby at home. It's a lot. It's a lot to raise a baby without a community. And I was a young mother without a community. So I really encourage people to seek community, get other mothers, get mothers groups, get as much support as possible if you don't have your family. But the transition for me was a little easier because, like you, I had passions. And I had my own internal alignment with joy and my own internal separate alignment with mission. So because I had purpose, mission, joy already deeply embedded in me, it was much easier to not lose myself. I didn't lose myself completely. I mean, I think there's some loss of self that is going to happen.
Definitely.
But you don't lose yourself completely.
I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, because I speak to so many listeners, friends, women who have their own businesses, and they're really worried about this time. And I don't want to sugarcoat it and say it's easy, you can do both, because it is really hard to do two things at the same time. In fact, it's impossible by definition, right? You can't be doing both at exactly the same time. But in a way, your ambition is clearer. Your time is more sacred. Like, I actually just think it's really changed my perception. I thought having a family would really take me away from the things I'm doing, but it has really reinvigorated me in a different way. And I do want to talk about that, because I think the other side of it is, people just saying, all the negatives about it. But I think it can be a really positive experience. It's a very unique experience. There's no one size fits all, of course. But thank you for also sharing, I guess, what that time looked like for you. I always say it's not black and white. It's two polar things can be true at the same time. And that's been very, very apparent in my motherhood journey so far. One thing I wanted to really ask you, when, especially not just becoming a parent, but definitely in this time as well, often we'll look at our childhood, right? When anyone listening to this show right now who's worked on limiting beliefs, who's tried to understand who they are as an adult, what direction they want to go in, and really just question why they hold certain things that they do, we often look back at our childhood. And it can explain a lot. But what I would love to know from your opinion, at what point does "this is because of my childhood" stop becoming insight and start becoming avoidance or an excuse?
Yeah, I love that. So I always tell my clients, that they can blame their parents till they're around, okay, if I'm very easygoing, I give them till 25. But really, in truth, and I tell this to my daughter who's 23, that after a certain age, they have to claim their own life and take responsibility for their own mind and their own patterns, even if they've had the worst childhood, right? And I say this not to minimize people's trauma, not to bypass the pain, and not to tell children, we're all children, we'll always be children of our parents, even if we're adults, not to tell us that our experience wasn't valid, or to just let go and move on. None of that. What I'm saying, and I think it's common knowledge, is that at some point we have to own that this was our unique story and it came with this level of trauma. But do we allow the past to continue to dictate the present? And at what point do we say, I can change my mind, and I can change my belief systems, and I can change my relationship to myself? Because at the end of the day, when we're adults, our parents are not actually controlling us anymore. The reason we feel controlled by them is because they now live as perpetrators in our own mind. So we have created, and we engender and we perpetuate the parent in our head, and we keep that perpetration alive because of our endorsement, right? But we don't realize that co-creation. So I do believe that, playing a victim constantly to the past will only hinder you. It's not that you were not a victim. Many children are victims. And this is not to say one is not a victim, but this is to say, how long will you keep being victimized and stay in victim consciousness around the past?
For somebody listening, maybe they can no longer speak to a parent for whatever reason. Maybe they have no interest in speaking to that parent, but they have that feeling like they are waiting for that parent to say something for them to feel healed, for them to move on. But again, maybe that's not an option for them right now. What is the first thing that they can do to start moving out of that victim mindset?
The first thing is that it's an illusion that you need that parent to say something to you to close the deal. It's a lie. You've been told that in order to get closure, in order to move on, you need that person on the outside, be it an ex-lover, be it your parent, your best friend, your ex-best friend. That is a lie, that you need them to say something to you, then you will move on. Now, doesn't mean you wouldn't like it, doesn't mean you wouldn't want it, but you don't need it. And once you realize that you don't need it, then the next question is, well, then how do I give it to myself? And that is the first step, is coming to that shift in how, from, when will I get it from the outside person, the question changing to how can I give it to myself? That's the first step. You have to make that shift. And then you go on a journey through coaching, through therapy, through inner work, to then learn how to give yourself what your outside parent never gave you. I have a coaching institute, and I created this coaching institute to train people to do exactly what you just asked, which is, how do I give myself what my parents never gave me? And this is really the essence of conscious parenting, is give yourself all the things your own parents didn't give you, so that you don't give the trauma to your child. So you heal yourself before you work with your children. I've been doing conscious parenting since 2010, right? So 16 years. And now, in your generation, conscious parenting is a very common thing, right? It's, you grew up like this. Well, let me tell you, 16 years ago, people were so resistant to this message because they were still stuck in the blame game and blaming parents and being a victim and then unconsciously passing down their traumas to their children. So when I began writing about conscious parenting, and what I now teach in my institute is, how do we break the cycle? How do we break that pattern and not pass on to our children all the baggage that was given to us? And we didn't know. We absorbed all that unconsciously,
What made you actually interested in starting to explore conscious parenting? Because from the age your daughter said, you already had a daughter at that point. So was there something that shifted in the way you were parenting, or something happened that made you interested? I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, well, my daughter's 23. My first book came out 16 years ago, but I had already been on this journey. And what made me interested is, as a psychologist, I was working with client after client and noticing all the pain and realizing, like every psychologist does, nothing new here, that damn, all the pain comes from childhood, right? I mean, it's one thing to know it intellectually, it's another thing to really see it in action. But every psychologist knows this, okay? This is what Freud taught. It's nothing new and revelatory. What was revelatory about my work, I think, is that I realized that parents were copy-paste, okay, Xerox copy, ditto, putting on their children what was done to them. And no one was telling the parent that they were doing this. And all the focus was really on the child, to fix the child. The child was the problem. Let's take the child to therapy. Let's take the child to get medication. But no one was kind of telling the parent that you are, kind of the biggest problem here. So when I began to see that, and then I became a mother, and I saw how I, in real time, was doing the same thing I saw my clients do, that's when I woke up and I was like, wow, somebody needs to tell parents that they are unconscious and that they need to heal the real child inside them before they can heal the child outside. And at that time, let me tell you, no one was calling parents out. And so it was a very unpopular message back then. So it's taken me a long time. And now it's mainstream. Now it's out there. Everyone talks about conscious parenting, but it was not even a term. Nobody even knew about it back then.
I think it's such a beautiful concept, because you're right. If we just literally copy paste what we know to what's comfortable for us, what we've seen being done to us, then it's a never ending cycle. For people listening who feel like, I'd love to really talk to my parents about this, but I don't know if they have the capacity, the appetite, the even interest to hear something like this. But I think it would be really interesting to have a conversation with them about this. Maybe they've noticed they copied and pasted what their parents did. Do you think it's possible for a child, even if, you know, today I'm an adult, to have that conversation with a parent who's maybe not that conscious? And how would you recommend actually going about bringing that up?
Yeah, what a great question. I always tell my adult clients who want to go and, address these things with their parents that they can try, but, you really can't expect people to change, especially older people, unless they are seekers, unless they are on this path of self-discovery. So I often tell my clients to, go in with minimal expectations and understand that our parents were doing the best that they could, and that they were also raised with unconsciousness and they didn't know any better. So, we have to, we don't have to do anything, but I recommend that we try to lessen our resentment towards our parents, because we have no idea how they were raised. And to judge them, even if they've hurt us, to judge them is just to keep ourselves stuck in resentment. But of course, sometimes people just have too much pain. They can't let go. But, parents, if they were raised very unconsciously, the chances are that they are not going to change. So if we have minimal expectations, then we can try.
So do you think the better approach is to find that peace that you can give yourself, instead of maybe waiting for your parent to turn around and say, oh, I realized I did all this, or try and have that conversation? If you're going with minimal expectations, is the kind of safer thing for yourself, or the better thing, I should say, is to find that through the tools you said, like find that peace yourself?
Definitely. And guess what? The peace is attainable. It's not a distant promise. You can begin to find peace within yourself if you learn to do the inner work. And I say this with such conviction is because I do this. I teach people, like we have 150 people a year that I put through this coaching institute that are learning how to heal themselves. And if we can just do this inner work, we can undo the damage our parents did. And I do it in 5 months with people. So it's not a distant promise, but you have to have intention. You have to work on yourself. You have to say to yourself, I'm tired of my old patterns. I'm tired of passing it on to my children. I'm tired of botching up my life. And obviously, I have a lot of issues and I need to get help. See, the hardest thing is for people to admit that they need to change, because most of our lives we are waiting for other people to change, and we keep blaming others and thinking that if only they change, we're going to be okay. So we spend years and decades waiting for others to change, and then one day, hopefully, there's a light bulb aha moment where you go, maybe I can go change myself. Maybe I need to learn something. So it takes a lot of humility to do the inner work. And that's what blocks people, is their ego that says, oh, why should I change? Why can't they change? And that ego keeps people more in dysfunction than ever before.
Yeah, I hear you. I think what would be really interesting, if I can share, I guess, a recent personal experience, and perhaps we can workshop what this might look like, or I guess what your teachings have to walk me through or teach me about this current experience. So one thing I've noticed is when my daughter, mind you, she's 10 months old, she's going through the growth spurts, the teething, all of it. I find I have such a low capacity for her kind of like whingy cry. It's not like a hurt cry. It's not an upset cry. It's just a whingy cry. It's like, if I could describe it, it'd be like complaining, right? And I say that like she's a 25-year-old whinging about her life. But it's that cry that's like a whinge. I find I have such a low tolerance for it, and it almost triggers me instantly. So I'm coming to you with kind of, this is something I've noticed. It really triggers me. I seem to have low capacity for it. What is happening in that experience?
Okay, you're so brave. Thank you for letting me give you some support. So let me first ask you, if you could put words to the whingy crying, and imagine she was a 15-year-old, what words would that whingy crying have?
Annoying,
No,
inconvenient.
give me the whole sentence. So she's going, right, whatever her crying sounds like,
Yeah.
put words to it. What would it sound? What are the actual sentences?
Oh, I haven't thought about that. Like attention, like look at me, come to me. I don't know, just sort of like,
No, go there, because you're
yeah,
interpreting the whingy crying, but you don't know
yeah.
what you're interpreting, right? So let's go there. You're having a reaction to it, but you're skipping a step, right? So there's the whingy crying, which is the stimulus, and then we have your reaction, which is I'm so bloody annoyed.
Yeah.
But so now I'm asking you, you're having a reaction. What? Give me sentences, give me words. Look at me, look at me. Mommy, why aren't you looking at me? Go ahead. What else?
Yeah, what are you doing over there? Come to me. I want you here now. I'm going to
Yeah,
keep
why?
crying until you look at me.
What are you doing there? Come to me. Okay, so now I'm going to be the baby, and I
Okay.
want you to talk back to me, okay? If you could, right? So you're going to talk back to me. So I'm going to be I'm not going to cry. I'm going to use my words, okay?
Okay.
Mommy, what are you doing over there? You're never looking at me. Can you look at me? Stop what you're doing and look at me.
Mommy's just doing something. I'll be 5 minutes.
You never come on time. You're always saying 5 minutes. Look at me. Come here. I need you.
I know, baby. I'll be there in a minute.
Okay. So what's happening inside your body right now as you're talking to me?
I'm feeling guilty, but also just trying to like do what I got to do. It's in very
Beautiful.
doing energy.
Correct. So you're doing something and this baby is trying to take you away from this doing. That's how you're feeling. Like she's annoying me in a way because she's taking me away. And then you have guilt. So let's talk about the guilt. What is the guilt saying? Give words to the guilt. Like give me sentences.
You should be with her. Why is what you're doing more important than being with her?
You should be with her. Look at you. You're not a good mom. You should be with her. Now, when you feel that, right? So I'm going to say it again. Tell me how you actually feel in your body. Look at you. You're not a good mom. You're always busy. She needs you. Why aren't you with her? So when I say those words, what shows up in your body?
It was like you're ripping my heart open.
Oh, you're feeling bad,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
And then you're feeling annoyed that you're feeling bad because you got to do this job. You see?
Yeah, like I could be making her lunch and she's just like whinging for it, you know?
Yeah, like, hello, I'm trying my best. Doesn't she see?
Can't
Okay,
do everything, that kind of feeling.
beautiful, beautiful. So now I'm going to say those words again. Okay, so just hear me. And as you hear me, I want you to imagine yourself as a little girl as I'm saying it. Okay?
Okay.
Oh, you know what? I can't do everything. Everybody wants me to do everything, and I'm trying my best. Doesn't everyone see I'm trying my best? I can't do everything at the same time. I'm just trying here really, really hard. Can anybody just see how hard I'm trying? I'm doing so much. I'm trying to do everything. So
That's my mum.
that's your mom?
That is
Tell me
literally
more. Tell me
exactly
more.
what she would say.
So tell
That's
me
like
more.
her voice. It's like you talking was literally like me hearing her voice.
So tell me more about your mom.
My mum has very high standards for herself. Always, had this guise of, well, how does she do everything all the time? She's so perfect. Grew up really like her on a pedestal, really having that vision of her just doing and being everything. But I think now that I'm older and I'm an older woman and I see her as an adult, that voice kind of mirrors, how tough she was on herself.
And do
And
you
really
think,
loops it back to like, am I copy pasting now? I think you've just given me some food for thought.
well, a little bit, right? I think that voice shows up inside you because you are trying to do everything and you are trying to do it all. So when you have a baby now who seems ungrateful, who seems she's not realizing, hello, do you understand how many things I have to do? And I have done so much and I'm doing so much and you just don't. So the baby becomes a critic. She's taken on, like you said, her complaining. Now the baby, is just crying. But you've interpreted it as a complainer, as a critic, because you feel all this pressure to do everything. Your mother lived with a critical voice inside her. Like your mother was always like talking to people who were not even there. Like, what do you want from me? I'm doing everything. She had this internal pressure. And you, in some ways, probably have absorbed some of that internal pressure. Like your baby's just crying, but you're acting like she's making you feel bad.
Yeah.
She's not making you feel bad. You're feeling bad because you have this pressure to do everything, right? So you have to make this and you have to do that. And so when you're in doing mode, you're trying to do everything and then you're feeling unseen. But it's not the baby's job to see you, nor is the baby even saying that she doesn't see you. The baby is not saying she sees you. The baby is not saying she doesn't see you. The baby is not saying anything. She's just like, can somebody come here? I'm alone. I'm a tiny person and I'm feeling scared. But you've interpreted it as demanding, complaining, critiquing, whining. And look how you're putting all this stuff on the cry, which is actually just a cry, right? But look, that's why I asked you, what words have you put to the sound, right? And it's so interesting. If I put 10 mothers in the room and we all heard your baby crying, just the sound, everybody would have different words to the crying.
And to that
Right.
point, my husband can sit there and be like, it's not even bothering me. Like, why is it bothering you? He's just like, she's just making noise. And I'm like, no, she's not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he may be the other extreme of like, let's ignore everything. But and you are overly personalizing it. Like you're like, I'm coming, stop it, right? And you because you have all this internal pressure to be a super achiever.
I used to hear a lot of parents talk about how your kids teach you a lot about yourself, but this is really like one of those moments, right, where you get a mirror to yourself of the way you see yourself, or the space I hold for myself, the inner voice I have for myself, and really what I've been labeling or the story I've been telling myself about that scenario has instantly put me in this trigger state.
Exactly. And young children are the best teachers because they're literally not even saying a word, you know. But we've
We're making it all
interpreted,
up.
we made it all up because we project what's inside. So you live, the deeper takeaway for you is that you actually live with this inner critic all the time. You've just now made her sound the critic, but you live with a critic all the time. A critic who's like, come on, do more. And so you're always answering the critic inside yourself. Can't you see I'm doing everything? Can't you see I'm doing everything? Which is your mother's voice, right? And you're literally projecting onto your daughter, and you're literally in your body saying to the daughter, can't you see I'm doing everything? Like, why do you need me right now, right? So young children are even better because you truly see your whole drama. You see your whole story, and they're not even saying a word.
So interesting. So in that 10 seconds with me being triggered and before I say something I'm going to later regret, what's the best thing to do?
You have to really work on separating your own issue. So you have to really confront that you have a perfectionism, you have an overachiever, you have a doer, and that is going to clash with your daughter. So first you have to own your own monster, so to speak. And then you have to really train yourself to see your daughter in her own lane. So you don't merge the two, right? You don't project your inner critic onto her and make her be critical of you, and then you don't like her, right? Or don't like her crying. But you made her a critical person. She's not a critical person. You made her an annoying person. She's not an annoying person, right? You made her a complainer. She's not even complaining. So then you have to separate who is the real child and who is the inner child.
That's so
And I have
powerful.
this as a whole chapter in one of my books. Who is the real child? Because we're not even
Wow.
seeing the real child, we're projecting. So as you begin to understand a baby, and a baby wants somebody with them all the time, because in our culture, we're not what we're doing with our babies, leaving them in the other room, leaving them in a bed. That is not the way babies are supposed to be raised. They're supposed to be swaddled and carried on the back or carried on your chest by yourself, by your mother, by the grandmother, by the auntie, till they can walk. So this whole idea of leaving the baby alone is a Western industrialized idea. We never did this when we were hunter gatherers. We carried the baby with us all the time because it was unsafe to leave the baby on the floor. So we are developmentally and socially wired for contact. So even this whole idea of like, can you be alone for a little bit to a 10-month-old is actually against our wiring. So she's
I
not
see
doing
that.
anything. She's right. She's like, be next to me. I need my mother.
Yeah, I see that. And you know what's funny? Like, before I became a mum, I was so sure on the way I would do things. I was going to sleep train. And, I don't think there's any wrong and right way to do it. I think whatever works for the mum and the family is great. But I've been co-sleeping with her and I've absolutely been loving it. And I never, ever thought, I genuinely, like, pre-mum me would probably be judging me right now. But, like, I just think being a parent, like, obviously this has just been such a beautiful opportunity that we've just discussed, right? To learn more about who I am. It's like speed accelerated self-development if you have that consciousness with it, but also to let myself just be flexible and explore new ways that might make more sense for me. Because what you just said, like going back to how we were hunter-gatherer times, like that really feels very aligned for me in the way I parent. But you've given me a lot of really beautiful food for thought there in terms of the story I've been telling myself and what it actually is. So thank you so
Right.
much.
Say one more thing, because so many parents do this. You know, I remember my daughter, she was 4 or 5 years old, and she was being really mischievous and playful, and I thought she was trying to manipulate me, okay? So I literally turned to her and I said, don't play games with me, okay? And she looked at me and she said, oh, did you want to play a game, mommy? Let's go play a game. Okay, such a simple moment, right? But that was a mirror to me at how I was looking at her as a manipulator. I was looking at her like, she's playing games with me. She's being sneaky. And the poor thing was just being herself. And that really like showed me that I live in a really dark world inside myself where I'm thinking people are out to get me. Even my daughter's out to get me. And I'm trying to make sure she doesn't, over get me. And I'm in my own damn movie. So many parents don't realize how much they have recruited their children in their movie. And we're the
Wow.
director, we're the cast, choosers, we're the script writers, and we recruit. So if we have a history with betrayal or a history with abuse, we will recruit them and make them the abuser or the betrayer, and they are not doing anything. I write about this in my last book, The Parenting Map, I really encourage new parents to read it. It's 20 steps and really very simply laid out, but deep concepts of projection and expecting your children to meet your fantasies, and a lot of unconscious stuff gets put on our children.
Well, more reason as to why the work you're doing is so powerful and so beautiful. If you're still watching at this point, it's clear that we care about the same type of content. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this channel is made for people just like you who value these types of conversations. And if this topic resonates, make sure you hit that like button so I know to keep on exploring it on the show. I want to ask you, your new work, we talk about raising conscious daughters and raising conscious sons. What did you see in the modern world that felt like you needed a separate conversation for boys and girls?
Yeah, I wrote 2 books. They're coming out in September. So for people who can get them, they're called Raising Conscious Sons and Raising Conscious Daughters. Yeah, the reason I wrote 2 books is because our sons and daughters are being manipulated by the algorithm and the digital world very differently. The minute the algorithm realizes that you have a daughter, it begins to feed her different things. And the minute the algorithm realizes that you have a son, that you're a boy or male, you get fed different things. So I don't mean to reduce human beings by gender at all, but to really say that there is a biological blueprint, a hormonal biological blueprint for boys and for girls that's different, and we need to honor that pathway because the tech world is fully exploiting those hormonal blueprints. And if parents don't get real with what those are, we won't be able to protect our children in the way that they need.
So what's the biggest difference then in how we raise boys and girls differently?
There's so many differences, but one of the biggest ones is that we expect our boys to talk to us like our girls, and we expect our girls to be stoic and unexpressive like our boys, right? So we also expect our boys to sit still and to not use their bodies and to not have the testosterone that they have. And we, in a way, suppress our boys' natural physical impulsivity and instincts. And that's a great detriment to boys who grow up to be very directionless and lost men. And for girls, we don't realize how toxic social media and the algorithm is because girls create a sense of self through others, through the gaze of others anyway. And now you've put, all this gaze on her from a virtual, insane stadium of strangers. She is being, just decapitated with feedback, and too much feedback for a girl who anyway develops a sense of self through feedback is devastating and overwhelming. And this is why the stats are so alarming, because it's the worst mental health crisis we've ever seen.
Did you let your daughter have social media?
This is my disclaimer for being an unconscious parent. I was the first generation of parents who could even give their children social media. So this is my plea. Like I plead the fifth. Like I didn't know. So I remember, but she didn't have a phone till she was 13 or 14. And back then, Instagram was just starting. Can you imagine a world where Instagram was just starting? I'm sure you can't. But it was so innocent back then, right? So we didn't know. So I was so excited to give her a phone. I didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. I didn't realize I was giving her a drug. So back then it was still slow, but by 16, 17, everything was full speed. And she was completely addicted. And all her friends in her generation, got addicted in that wave. But we didn't know. I'm 53. My daughter, literally was in her teens when the phones really came out and began being used. But now I tell parents that they need to be really careful. And with all the data you have now, there's no excuse to give your children any smart screens till they are teenagers. There's no need. Like for your daughter, she doesn't need to grow up like that.
Yeah. The stats and the research coming out is undeniable. I have one last question for you just before I let you go for today. In a world where parents are building brands and communities online, where is the line between sharing your child and using your child for content?
Yeah, I have a very strict policy, but I don't judge anyone who does use their child, okay? But my recommendation is that you don't, because you're not getting their consent. It is just not fair. I remember when I wanted to pierce my daughter's ears, and in my culture, that's such a thing you do in India. Oh my God, I had the hardest time, because I was like, I'm not getting her consent. So I actually waited till she was around 6 or 7, and as if that's consent, right? It's not consent. She doesn't know what it is. But I gave myself some guilty, appeasement by presuming I waited that long. It was really tough for me to do that. And I was like, wow, I can't even do that against her sovereign destiny and her will. So when you put your children on social media, just know that you are robbing them of their right to participate and to have consent.
But don't you think as parents, right, there are certain decisions that, the concept of having your child's consent is sort of outweighed by the fact that as a parent you have to make decisions, like, right, whether you vaccinate them, whether they're vegetarian, whether they're going to eat meat, whether they're homeschooled, like all these decisions, like the concept of a child giving consent to that is sort of a parent's decision at the end of the day. Why is it different with social media?
Oh, it's very different. So you threw a whole bunch of things in there, but let me just quickly parse it out. Number one, if it's something to do with their health, like vaccinations, and I'm not saying that vaccinations are healthy, okay? I'm just saying that this is the standard protocol. We all believe that for the current modern world, vaccinations are healthy. Okay, that's a different level of not getting consent. Like you take them to the dentist, you take them for their, yearly annual checkups, you give them Tylenol, okay? I'm not saying it's the best thing, but I'm saying you do it because your intention is physical health. Mm-hmm. But then there's a whole bunch of crap that we do that comes from our belief systems. So, homeschooling versus public schooling, that is a belief system. Whether I raise them Jewish or Catholic, belief system. That is not objective. That is very subjective. So we need to be aware. What am I passing on? It's the same like saying, I'm anti-Semitic, or I'm I'm anti-gay and lesbian people. I'm homophobic. I'm going to pass that on. No, you don't have to pass that on. That's a choice. And then there's even more things that are fully a choice, like putting your kid on social media. That is not only a choice. Very often it's a business decision. Mm. And now you have a full agenda of using this person for your business. Look, none of it is catastrophic. These are choices we make. So we have to make them with mindfulness, and we have to make them with some awareness of the unintended consequences. Everything has an unintended consequence. Doesn't matter what it is. So as long as you're ready to defend yourself, if your daughter or your son later on asks you, I know that the few times, or rather the many times, I have talked about my daughter at a conference or in a book, I have not taken her consent because she was too damn young, and I was going to the conference and she was 4 years old, and I talked about my daughter. But I always tried to talk about her from my point of view, not her point of view, right? From my experience as a mother. And now that my daughter's 23, I showed her every example in these two books, and I asked for her consent. Like, is it okay? And many times she was like, no, this is not okay. And then I had to negotiate that. So as long as you're making your choices mindfully, you will have a consequence either way, and you can choose what consequence is better for you.
Mm. And I suppose that's the whole purpose of conscious parenting, right? It's just bringing a level of awareness to the decisions you're making instead of just making them and not thinking about how it impacts other people, or maybe what's the source or intention of the why of what you're doing. Dr.
Exactly.
Shefali, I wish we had another 3 hours to chat, so I might need to get you on for a part 2, or when I come to New York, I'd love to sit and chat with you. But I'm really, really so grateful for your time and your work. I continue to learn so much from you. So extremely grateful, and thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. You're such a wise young woman, and it's been an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.